Yes, here we go. It's the bus. It's the Tuesday ticket. We are back. Apologies for the lack of episodes of late. Couple of things going on, shit happens. But we are all good. And me, myself, and Filberto Silva. And I think we're going to have to call you Filberto wearing that Italian top sport and that Baggio-esque goatee tonight, mate. You're looking rock and roll. Great to have you on the bus. Great to see so many folk on the bus already as well. How the devil are you, Phil?
Oh, mate, I'm fantastic. Yeah, I didn't realise I was paying homage subconsciously to Baggio. I didn't even realise, as you pointed out beforehand. But yeah, it is a bit. But yeah, it's very, very grey. I've noticed coming in. I said I'm supposed to Coglu, where you pointed out last week. You said, "Are you going a beard, Phil?" And I went, I'm kind of subconsciously paying tribute to Ange, how great it is right now. It's crazy. Yes, you're right. Italian top, goatee. Yeah, I guess I am paying tribute to Roberto.
Roberto, he's been your avatar quite a few times as well, if I'm not mistaken. So that's it, mate. Maybe it was subconscious, mate. A football hero indeed. I think mine must be Paddy McCourt because I've got a still in hand for tonight's show. Anyway. We'll do all that good stuff. Great to be back on the bus. All that good stuff. In case you've forgotten, means give us a wee like, give us a share, slag the hair, slag the goatee if you want. No, don't slag Phil's goatee. Don't you dare. You can slag my hair though. That's acceptable. If you want to, hit the subscribe button, do it now. Hit subscribe. Hit the like button. Hit the thumbs down button. We don't really care about that either. If you want to become a Bhoycie Bus member, like so many of you have. It's $1.99 a month. We will do more shows. It will be more consistent. Don't you worry. The wee breather's been had. We'll be back bigger, better than ever. But there's so many Bhoycie Bus members that do so, such as Ali, 420 somewhere, Michael Cairns, Joe Henry, Smell the Glove. Of course, Pam's here. Of course. Alistair Jack, Jim C. There's loads, mate. Gary Brown, they're everywhere. Alex Forsyth, all the names. Jim Dolan. Ugh, love it. Good to see you all back. San Fran Celtic, loads of yous. Thanks for sticking with us. Phil, I have went with, and obviously there's piesports.com as well, tasty pastry treats and all that, 12.5% discount, bus 1888. Anyway, Phil, Celtic right now sit top of the table. Now, it's been a topsy-turvy season this year, right? Let's just have that out. Celtic have failed to convince at any point that they're going to get the job done this year. Let's be real. They failed to convince you that this is it now. We're on the winning streak that is required. Even when, I think if you remember, we had the 8-point gap at the top, our most amount of wins in a row domestically was 3. 3 domestic wins in a row. It was, whilst we had that 8-point gap at the top, we've had better runs since, but the gap's got closer. Now, albeit our rivals have a game in hand right now, but we're going to talk about whether Celtic's serious upturn in performance, I felt, at the weekend, serious upturn in fortunes of individuals, and we could talk about them as well, coinciding with maybe just a bit of fortune in general. And that might be Rangers not playing. Now, that means they've got to catch up that game. And as we know from previous experience, points make prizes, not games in hand. I think we all look back to the lockdown season and we always think, maybe we could still salvage this. If we win all the games in hand, the gap's not quite as bad as it seems, and it can get away from you. I think psychologically as well, they won't like the fact that they've not got it all in their own hands. Now, I appreciate, I've said in the title, that can we stay top for the rest of the season? But Rangers play first this weekend. Rangers are at home. But that doesn't necessarily mean they'll win, because they've got Hibs coming, and I would say Hibs, Motherwell, is there much between those two sides? I don't think so. No one's seen Motherwell getting a result against them. I think it's been one of the most brushed over home defeats by either Celtic or Rangers this season. Funnily enough, it's them. It seemed to get brushed over because we got beat at Tynecastle in a game you can only hear commentary on, not audio from referees. We can talk about that as well. And the departure, or the imminent departure, of Crawford Allen. I look at that weekend and I always think that was the chink in the armour. Could we see another one this weekend, with them knowing they now need to get the win, just to go back in front, knowing that if we win at the weekend, we go back in front. Doesn't matter with the games in hand, because whenever that fixture then gets rearranged and scheduled into, their negative mindset has already produced a multitude of excuses as to why it could cause them problems and benefit Celtic. Cool. I'm down with that. I hope they're right. I hope they're absolutely bang on the money. We'll kick off, though, by talking about how Celtic actually performed at the weekend. Because I think, whilst we can look at all the other reasons, what we've really wanted from Celtic is examples and a consistent run of examples. Now, yet again, I feel, to be totally balanced, the performance of the weekend was a moment at this stage, because we don't know what's going to come after. But even when we won 4-2 the weekend before, it wasn't a compelling display, Monty. But it was a performance, though, that I thought, despite it only being as convincing a goal difference one as the week before, I felt that was Celtic looking far more like it. And that is, again, going to lead us to saying things like, do we kick on from here? All that sort of carry on. You were at the game. Yep. Did you not feel that was a performance to leave Celtic Park this year, or this season, I should say, far more encouraged than you've been in other weeks?
It's definitely, since the turn of the year, since going into 2024, the home games I've been to, the most like convincing one, coming away with like a good sense, a good feeling after it, because every home game up to now has been, I mean, can't really mince my words, turgid, just really awful to watch, essentially, because we started that Ross County game at the turn of the year, the 1-0. After 1 minute we scored, and that was it. That was all she wrote for the rest of the game. And every game since then has been, drop points to Kelly, Murrow, and so on. So it's been dull watching. Do it right. The Livy game last week was woeful as well, despite winning it. But that one, it was a convincing one. It was 3-1 going on whatever we wanted it to be. A few disallowed goals, a few contentious points, handballs, whatnot, VAR reviews. But yeah, we were all over them. We didn't give St Johnstone really anything. The goal at the end came after Joe Hart pulled off a blinding save. Let's be honest, Joe Hart's unlucky. He pulls off a great save late in the game. He's not had much to do all game. He's reacted really well to it. It's happened to fault with the boy and he scored, but it was just a mere consolation. But I think the key to that whole performance, because the first half, I say, was pretty routine, and I've seen these performances at Celtic Park this year going at half-time 1-0. Where we were falling apart was because we haven't got a second goal yet, and things would usually, the second half, it would stay 1-0, we get a bit frustrated, the other team wastes a bit of time, starts throwing things forward.
Nervy, you could say as well.
Yes, nervy, substitutions don't quite click, and then the team that were playing just throws everything forward, gets a goal. I literally said to my mate, just as it came at half-time, I says, we need to get an early goal second half. We do that, and we did. We did a minute into the second half. Kuhn scores, gets his first goal at Celtic Park, and after that, I felt, watching it in the stadium, I could feel the tempo had picked up a wee bit. They were passing it around a bit quicker. Yeah, a lot of the same moves were happening, but there was a bit more of a forcefulness to it. It seemed like there was a bit of purpose there. So their confidence seemed to be up because, they weren't nervy. As you said there, the best word for you, they didn't have that, oh God, they've got a goal, but there was only one goal in it. And then we had the third goal. The best winger at the club scoring the third goal. Obviously, James Fossey took it well. Let's be honest, he took it well. We need to call it like it is. I felt when he came on last week against Livy. I know Brendan with the hyperbole of he's the best winger at the club, but he was all right when he came on against Livy, and he was fine when he came on there. It's quite incredible in 2024. We're looking at James Forrest and going, good performance there from James. But I say, if he can contribute at this stage of the season, and he's obviously been through it with all the years he's been here, with all the titles that he's won. So an experienced head at this time, it could be a valuable player to be bringing on at this stage. Because we're at a point now where we've managed to squeak back into the lead. Time is now running out, and it's no mistakes. We can't make any mistakes from now to the end of the season. So that performance, if we can push on, and you are right to say it tentatively because we have said that a few times this year. Are we going to kick on? Have we turned the corner now? Hopefully that was a sign of things to come for the next 8 games, I think, to go, 8 league games.
Yep, and the thing is as well, when it comes to this, and you talk about guys like James Forrest, obviously he's doing the hyperbole, as you rightfully say. That's how you pronounce that?
Hyperbole, yep. Hyperbole, some people say, but it's hyperbole.
I'm sure I called it hyperbole once, I got ripped. But the thing is with something like Forest, we're building them up so that maybe the worst thing. And when you lose a much maligned player like David Turnbull might not be the easiest on the eye. He might not always be the happiest, the happiest player fan, or the player that makes fans happiest to see on the park. However, his goal sort of threat is something to me that we definitely need again in the team. For all maybe the little intensity he brings that Brendan omitted anymore because of, numbers, his age and things like this. But he does have a knack for getting goals, even if he's been moderately quiet throughout a game. James Forrest is someone you can bet your hat on. If you play him, 10 games, he'll score at least 1-2 goals. In that, for a winger, it's not bad, right? Now, I think with something like that as well, with his experience, I can see why Brendan was building him up. But then you've got the crux of it where you go, well, the guy that was written off, not James Forrest, was the guy who's just finding his feet at Celtic, Nicholas Kuhn, or Nicola Kuhn, whatever you prefer. And to me, his last two displays have absolutely banished the early worries because he's looked like a completely different player. Now, there's a bedding-in period for any player that joins any football club, not just Celtic. But at Celtic, there's a level of expectation that very few get to grips with minute one, unless they're of a certain vintage, a certain level of experience, and have memories or times at clubs of similar stature, and they've had similar sort of, as I say, experiences in the past. When you come like Nicola Kuhn into a club like Celtic, it's quite easy to see at 23, 24, these guys get overawed. Hence why I've always tried to say, I think going so one-dimensional in your approach in recruitment can be a negative because you're getting a bunch of guys with, despite the various levels of ability, fine well they're not going to have that wisdom, that know-how, that knack when it comes to this. And it's quite easy for them to be overawed when joining, the madness that is joining Celtic. He's looked much more like it. That's two bonuses out wide. Forrest, and I think you're right, it's not just his goal at the weekend there. He looked decent, a threat prior to that as well in his last appearance. And then Kuhn, I'm looking at these last two games going, okay, that's now two more added to the party. Now, Abada left, so it was essential now for Nicholas Kuhn to really hit the ground running now. Because despite, again, I think Abada falls into a different type of category than Forrest, but probably the same outcomes. He has moments in games. He scores goals and then could be maybe not that effective the rest of it, but he will get you those goals. Or he will get that goal contribution as it's now called in the modern era. Yep. But if Nicholas Kuhn can get goals and assists in games as well, come off and bring on a Jamesy Forrest 20 minutes, Celtic suddenly look a wee bit more potent in attack. And I think at times you're absolutely spot on. Too often, despite the quality of players that we've had in the attacking sort of phase of the team, we've definitely not capitalised on that enough this season. We've not built enough from positions of strength, and we've caved too often from any sort of adversity. Now we're beginning to look at a wee bit differently over the last couple of weeks. 7 goals in those games that we're referring to as well. It's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah, it's a time when, especially with the wingers, they've been, let's be honest, the winger performance, it seems, for all season has been inconsistent to awful at times. So maybe this is the right time. Kuhn's finding his feet just at the right time. James Forrest is unlikely as it sounded probably at the start of the season. If he can come in and contribute valuably at this stage of the season, then it's we just need it. Whoever can, put the ball in the back of the net at this stage, it's just a case of anyone in a Celtic shirt, don't care who it is, because we're at a point now where every one of them has to be absolutely at the races. We do not have time for passengers now. We've dug ourselves into this mess because you said at the top of the show talking about an 8-point lead. I believe actually at one point it was 11 points, but it was a case of we'd played the day before, then they played the next day. And
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, it was 11 points at a stage, and it's like, yeah, we've basically dug ourselves into this. Now, only us, we can only get ourselves out. But yeah, it could be a perfect storm brewing here where, just everything's coming together at just the right time. It's not comfortable for us fans to sit through, ideally, because we're used to walking these titles and having it wrapped up by pretty much this point. So it's a bit of an uncomfortable run in. But if it gets the job done, and, we do get over the line first, and even though it will be a bumpy race at the end of the season, then hey, as long as we get there and get that trophy at the end of the season, because there's so much riding on the line with this Champions League qualification, this new format, this prize pot. Whether the Celtic board actually do anything with it, that's something we can talk about in the summer. We'll see. But yeah, there's so much on the line.
It's more about what if we don't win the league, what the other lot would do with it.
Yeah, that's what.
And I think if you think we're frustrated with the Celtic board right now, we have to be frank here. I think that would go up levels and levels when you see what they're willing to do to be a club that runs, maybe breaking even. I know they didn't used to do that. They didn't used to do that. Or the previous entity didn't used to do that. Or this one probably didn't either, actually, for years. But I think they'd be far more aggressive with the money. They would speculate to accumulate, which I think we went far too far the other way. But that's a topic for another day. And we want the conversation of that to be one based on us winning the league this year. And I do think the weekend, for the couple of reasons, Celtic's performance, first and foremost, I think shows our appetite and some of our quality coming at the forefront, which is always the healthiest part of the discussion. But then we do need Lady Luck. Talk to me, Phil, about what you think the benefits are for Celtic that game got called off on Sunday. And I wonder if their fears are coming out in it all, because see, deep down, you look at it, they had a disappointing night they were in Europe, by the way, so I'm not one. I know it's great to point and laugh at the Huns and all that, but I'm never going to point and slag a team that's in a round of competition that we didn't make, right, in Europe, yet again, playing European football after Christmas. And I thought it was a tie that, to be perfectly honest with you, I think Celtic would, going on recent history, would have got knocked out of probably more convincingly. But that can knock the wind out your sails as well. And going away from home, I think, on the back of that, could have been tricky for them. So the optics for me was frustration at first. But then when you start hearing, the odd phone in, and you start picking up the vibes on social media, it looks to me like there's a bit of panic in there about it's all going their way. It's all going their way, it's always Celtic's way now. That was to do them a favour. Now, I didn't quite view it as that initially. But hearing that makes me go, maybe it was. What do you think the ramifications of that postponement could mean in what is now a title running?
It is indeed psychological. It's huge from a psychological point of view. Yeah, outsiders might look at the table and go, it's only a point. The team's always got a game in hand. There's only a point in it. So it's like they wouldn't think much. But genuinely, we've seen it. Plenty of examples you can point to. I'll give you an extremely good example of a similar scenario that happened to us, sadly. Neil Lennon's first season in charge. We had a game against Inverness rescheduled near the end of the season that got postponed, and it was a game where Inverness had absolutely nothing to play for. And we were in the driving seat. We were a point behind Rangers with a game in hand. And we went up to Inverness thinking, we got a good draw at Ibrox. Remember, we drew 0-0, and it was like, well, balls in our court now. All we got to do is go up to Inverness, and we'll end up being top of the league going into like the last game of the season. We're up to Inverness, and we could beat. So depending when this game gets rescheduled, I think even if Dundee have got nothing to play for, I think it still could be a wee sticky wicket for them, to be honest. It really could, because again, we've seen it in the past. Teams with nothing to play for can be just as dangerous as a team with something on the line. As it turns out, the way the league table is, I think Dundee are only 3 points behind Hibs with a game in hand for the top 6, which obviously means more money for teams like Dundee. Basically, it means 2 extra games against Celtic and Rangers, which is more revenue for them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Money is key at the end of the day. So for me, even though it may look like, I say to an outsider, look, I go, it's only a point. I mean, it's nothing. A point could be everything. I mean, you only need to be 1 point ahead at the end of the season to win the league. So it could be crucial at this stage. And yeah, I think I sensed the frustration with them at the weekend. They would have wanted to get that played and just try and get, because again, going back to something that's happened a few years ago, there's still a few players in that squad over there in Govan who are mentally weak. Tavernier admitted as much during the shutdown season, the season as they were falling apart. He came out in the captain's notes in one of their match day programmes as they were losing to Hearts twice, Hamilton Accies, and said that they don't like pressure. A lot of these players don't cope well with pressure. They don't like the fans being on top of them. The one title that they did win, we were absolutely nowhere near it, and they just coasted to it. So the pressure was not very much on them. There's no fans in the stadium neither. But this is now a to and fro title race, this one, and this point. And that game getting postponed could be one of those little weird ones. At the time, you may think it's a bit inconsequential, because my genuine reaction at first on Sunday was whatever, but now it's done a bit of stewing on it. You're like, it could be one of those little moments where you look back on at the end of the season and go, that was a crucial moment where we got ahead just for the international break, and it gave us 2 weeks to just sit there, regroup. We're talking about Hatate coming back as well, just in time for playing them as well. So, yeah, it could be everything just coming together at just the right time. Fingers crossed it is.
Well, these strokes they do change complexions of games as well, don't they? Because the narrative going into, let's just say, fingers crossed, for our point of view, we keep up our end of the bargain going to Ibrox, and our end of the bargain as Celtic is to win our games, right? Leading up to that. And give ourselves the best opportunity. That game's closing in now. It's very close. If we go into that, despite having played the game more, now David Kelly comes in, and he's just been gifted a membership of 420. What's his avatar? I can't remember. 420 somewhere. I nearly said 420 anywhere. 420 somewhere. Nice one for doing that, by the way. David, though, also saying, they have to play that game either before the break, so it'll likely be right before or right after the game versus us. That changes things. If we can go into the Ibrox game with them just feeling a wee bit tetchier than what they were before, on the back of 2 defeats out of 2 against Celtic, which people want to kind of brush to one, very much like when Rangers get beat off Motherwell at home. It's brushed to one side. They're doing great. They're doing amazing. Everything's fine. Celtic lose to Hearts with 10 men, dubious decisions, VAR, people chucked away, and it's panic stations, apparently. That shows you the difference in narratives. Brendan had a point when he said the story's already been written and we're going to write our own. I think that will come back and being, if my hopes are right and we're going to win the league, that'll become a quote, mate. Like, be careful what you wish for. That'll go down in that sort of historical note. And I just think that going to Ibrox, the whole angle of it changes if we go there knowing they're a bit tetchy. And what I've found with Rangers in these games, that their supporters anyway, they put a level of expectation that's false a lot of the time in their players. And I think the squad's got better gradually in the Sevco years. Don't get me wrong. I do think the squad's got better. But they were ramping the pressure on them at the beginning and hammering them for doing things that really they were at the best they could possibly do. See, now it's the same thing. I still believe that Celtic's squad is better than theirs, but the expectation of Celtic fans is always almost, we're never going to do this. Well, we won't do it. Theirs is always, we better do it. We should be doing it, right? And then if we're not, within 20 minutes, they'll hammer them. And Ibrox can become their biggest enemy at times like this. And see if they went in galvanised, top of the league, about to extend their gap at the top. That whole place has a different vibe, a different atmosphere at the beginning, and when the momentum is all with you from the kickoff, the Celtic's susceptibility to an early goal, well said there, boys. You see, I got that word in. I can't believe I pronounced that right. I'm chuffed with that. But if they were to have that momentum, they got an early goal, it'd be no surprise to anyone, and that galvanises everyone. Yeah. But when they go in a wee bit tetchy, they're relying on that opening 10 minutes. Just kill the affair. Just kill it. Opening 10 minutes and watch them turn on each other. And when I say turn on each other, it's fans turning on their own players. The second they play a sideways ball, boo, all that shit. Suddenly, we've got them exactly where we want them. And I can't emphasise enough, we've beat them twice this year already, the same group of players. We've beaten them twice this year. Rodgers is underwhelming, I think, is the best way to describe the season has been. has been able to stand up to this lot, no problem at all. 6 points out of 6, thanks very much. Let's make it 9 out of 9. We make it 9 out of 9, the league's done, in my opinion, for Celtic, because they'll crumble after that. That sounds bold, but I think that's the way it would go. I do feel this postponement, for whatever reason, has just slightly changed the dynamic of that fixture. Doesn't mean we'll win, but I do think it, for whatever reason, has given us more of an opportunity. Anyway, that isn't the only game, and it's all about Celtic to just keep building on these performances, and they've not done that enough this season. They've definitely not. But I just feel like the know-how's with us, and I think the panic will be with them. It's just a feeling. They've not won the league with fans in what?
2011.
Fuck.
There's
a generation. So there's a generation that will be going to their games that I've never seen them win must-win league games to win a title. Because they weren't there when they won it. Right. That sounds silly. That sounds like I'm having a pop. Maybe I am. I'm enjoying that bit. But that's not actually the point of what I'm saying. What is actually the case is they will never have been there. They've never experienced it. A generation I talk about very often on the bus, Celtic's generation of fans that became accustomed to European failure. So let's have it right. I understand the new generations of fans aren't accustomed to certain situations on both sides. But one of the important ones is Rangers supporters are not used to seeing Rangers must-win domestic games. Predominantly, they get beaten them for a generation of sides. That includes Motherwell 4-1s and things, let alone the whippings that Rodgers dished out to them in his first spell, let alone the treble anyone twice. Or finished off the first one, won the second one. Let alone Angie's treble. I mean, they've got all that as their memory bank going into this. No wonder they get tetchy in these fixtures. They wanted to be ahead for this game. But let's not have it right. However, getting back to it, what we've realised, Phil, as well, is Celtic's obviously changed their tact or changed their tone, began by the manager. The manager, obviously, is up for a charge, and that's, funnily enough, coinciding with when this next derby game might come. What have you made of the fact Crawford Allen is departing his post, being sacked, essentially? Let's be honest, a vote of no confidence. I think they're trying to make it polite. And the rumours abound that it's because once Celtic have challenged it, they've very Tory-esque, and I don't get political, but just like, in fact, you could say any politician-esque. Let's keep it that way. Any politician-esque, but very much, particularly looking back at the COVID scandal and all that, lose all their WhatsApp messages, suddenly they've lost the audio dialogue. If that's true, no wonder he's leaving. But how much does that benefit Celtic, and what does it help him? Because where I am is they'll just replace him with another. Is that not right?
Yeah, it's a bit similar to what's going on with ourselves. I've said this about the change of Mark Lawwell. It's like, what's the next move? It's the same with this now, Crawford Allen departing. That sounds great. What's the next move? We'll need to wait and see. I share the same sentiments as you. I'm not too confident that they'll replace him with anybody of any sort of real ability, because, it's the people who are... It's the people who are... I
love George Michael. He's the man.
It's those who are behind the technology that is the problem. The tech itself isn't necessarily the problem. It's those behind it. As for Crawford Allen, I find it interesting that he's been the head of the referees since like 2020 or something. And the only time he's ever been in the public eye was when he was on some sort of media tour to berate Celtic for a goal that Kyogo scored against Hearts 2 years ago. Remember? He scored a goal against Hearts at Celtic Park, beat them 1-0. It was before VAR had came in, and it was the infamous one where Chris Boyd had an absolute meltdown at half-time, not like him, shouting at Ailey Barber across the desk, going, when are we getting VAR? And she's like, I don't know. I'm not the head of the SFA. I don't know. He's like, we need VAR now and all that. And it's like, it was like a borderline offside. One of those, it just happens in the game. It's very hard for the human eye to pick it up. But then he had this media fallout, and Crawford Allen, the head of the referees, I remember when he was a referee, I can remember his name. I didn't even know he was the head, but he's going on the radio and talking about how it was a disgraceful decision and stuff like that. And you're like, this is just a total agenda now.
That's quite unheard of, though, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. You don't see that happen in England. I believe Howard Webb is like the head of the referees and all. He's like the head of like the VAR officials and stuff. You don't see him doing like media tours when finds there's wrong decisions made and berating one team. Yeah, it was crazy. It was a weird time, but yeah, good riddance to him. After that, it was just like, man, I didn't even know he was the head of the referees till that whole escapade. But yeah, I see he's leaving now. I mean, do I necessarily believe the rumours about what you've said about have they lost the audio? I don't know. It's one of these things we'll never ever find out the truth. But my gut feeling is he's just getting out the way of Dodge before it's just revealed how incompetent they are, because they are. They're just horrendous. Do
you think that's a rumor that's just been adding fuel to the fire? Essentially, he's going anyway. I mean, it does though. Regardless of whether they've lost the audio or not, you can't deny the timeline of events leads you to Crawford Allen is leaving because Celtic's raised grievances about that game. Yeah. That's undeniable, surely.
Yeah. There's one thing, though, that did come up, though, and amongst that fallout, regardless of if they've lost audio or not, if that turns out to be true, in the IFAB rules, it did state, and this was doing the rounds on the day it happened, this is, again, the IFAB rules, this is like the official rules on handballs. If a teammate kicks or heads the ball off of his own teammate, essentially, another player, as in the case of Johnstone headed it off Hatate's arm when he wasn't even looking, that's not deemed a handball violation, according to the IFAB rules. So it's like, well, who decided it was? Yeah.
Remember, IFAB was a key component in decisions not so long ago. IFAB only came to the fore in Scottish football. I think it was last season we started hearing about this IFAB, and it's funny that they pick and choose when it's relevant or not. I think we need to look back at the whole introduction of VAR and why only in Scotland it could cause more controversy than what the refereeing decisions before. Now, people might think, well, it does that in England as well. But trust me, to cause more controversy than the referees were before in Scotland was some effort, right? Not quite the same as what it is. I think it has maybe caused more focus in England on decisions wrong and more exasperation. But they were coming from more of a balanced place, more of a decent competence, Rogers, level than we are. We're coming from rock bottom and we're trying to dig deeper. That's the reality when we look at how bad VAR's been so far. Now, when Monty comes in and says, get rid of VAR, I mean, if you'd heard any Celtic fans say that before VAR was introduced, you'd laugh them out the door. I don't necessarily share Monty's view on this. I actually think VAR is worth keeping, provided it's run right. But I don't think Monty's alone in that view. I don't think his view in saying get rid of VAR now, and I swear if you'd asked any Celtic fan before VAR was brought in, if you'd be saying after 2 years get rid of it, we'd went, no, we need it. We need it so we can get rid of these shitey decisions. Instead, there's been a hell of a lot of fun had, not only at Celtic's expense, because I've got to be consistent as well. I think when Celtic play bad, it's great to focus on VAR.
Yeah.
But what I do feel is when Celtic have decided to act is, whether people like this or not, and I very often disagree with Celtic Board's actions, I think they've struck with VAR on one that they knew they had, whether you like the saying or not, a smoking gun. I think Celtic acted when they knew you are never going to have fun with us on our legal team when you explain this shit to us. You fucked it. And I think the departure of someone like that, Crawford, is purely to hide. It's purely running away. The added rumour that the audio is gone, I don't know what to make of that, because I don't know who would have the insight on it. Yeah. But either way, I understand how that sort of rumour begins. I do get that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise us, put it that way. It wouldn't surprise us, Phil, would it? No. I mean, this is the same group. If you remember the Jota offside?
There's one at Motherwell, with the.
And we had Gordon Duncan. We had Gordon Duncan on the Clyde one, literally Witsy ranting and raving that it's impossible to be wrong. It cannot be wrong. And then it got turned out the camera wasn't on.
That's right.
And it was subject. No, but what was the word you used to describe it? It was it's not the defaults. It was something like that, though. It's like it's already set in stone. I'm like, see if it was that accurate and it was that set in stone. These offsides all get dealt with straight like that. There is no fanning about. They've got to draw the lines, you clown. They were drawing the lines for cameras at the other end of the ground. And I do just wonder if Crawford Allen's ran out of lives, and the biggest or last live he took was the one at Tynecastle. Now, I still focus on Ida missing the penalty. I still focus on Celtic's ineptitude as 10 men. But when you isolate the referee's decisions away from the Celtic performance, Celtic have went in there with full of ammo. And without even having to get to the stage of having the discussion with the SFA, the top dogs of the whatever it is the referee's thing is left now. But the ramifications going forward, mate, what have we achieved and what do we learn from it? And is there ever going to be a change in how this VAR is worked? And I go back to a point I made with you for a few times on the bus. I think Celtic, if they've got, I know people don't like this opinion, but I stand by it. Celtic, to me, just pay for the real VAR. You know the one that the Premier League have got. It's an extra 1.5 million a year. If you think decisions are going against us, which potentially, let's be real here, will then get argued at the end of the season if we lose the league by a goal, a point, whatever. We're costly at Tynecastle by a guy who had to leave post. The top guy had to leave his post on the back of it because Celtic claimed it. We'll be claiming 60 million. I think 1.5 million out of us. Whatever. I think it's something like 1.5 million extra a year. I would just call it a fucking bluff. Celtic 1888 says 1.5 million each club. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. If you can tell us where you got that info from, mate, I'd love to know, because I don't think VAR is costing an extra £18 million, mate, per season in Scotland. So if you could check that for me, mate, though, it sounds like you know what you're talking about. So I'd love to see that. But I don't think it'll be as much as that. I don't think it's as costly an exercise to Celtic as what we thought.
Yeah, the one thing that I would have changed, though, with the whole approach of what happened is I would rather Celtic had been vocal in games that we had won where there were stupid VAR decisions against us. It seems like my worry at the time, and I said it as we were going along in the last 18 months, there was a lot of weird instances over the last year. Bernabei's strange handball against Dundee United with his arm behind his back. The very first VAR game we had with Michael Smith, clearly handballed at James Smith. James Forrest tried to flick it past him. He pulled his hand away. He had a look of panic on his face. Nick Walsh with a 10-second review. Oh no, just play on. And there was nothing, it was just glossed over, essentially. I would rather in these games that we won, Celtic could put something out there publicly, just saying that we've written to the SFA to seek clarification on something, just to show it. But maybe they've been doing it in the background, but I would still rather that they gave us vision of it, just so that I know they're doing it. Because now, of course, we're getting a bit vocal, and it's on the back of a game we've lost. So sadly, I know how the media are going to spin it and how the SFA are just going to swat us away and go, but I hope you're right, though, about maybe we have got a smoking gun. Maybe the lawyers are like, nah, he's only getting out of this one. But from a personal point of view, I would still have loved it if we still challenged them, even in games that we won, where there was a weird decision against us, because then we're showing consistency. As I'd like to think that maybe they've been doing it behind the scenes, but this is the Celtic board we're talking about, so who knows?
But notwithstanding that, though, Phil, see, sometimes as well, you've got to capitalise on, and by the way, a situation completely created by Celtic with this squad not being good enough, right? Situation league-wise that we should never have found ourselves in with the 8-point gap we had. Get all that out there right now. We all accept that. But now you're in the mire. Now you find yourself behind. It's always the worst thing to galvanise the fans and get everyone together by doing what they've done, particularly in the back of a defeat, because I think the majority of fans, if I'm honest, do blame now Tynecastle and officials than what they do the team. The vast majority, to be honest. So when you look at that, you go, okay, that's worked. That's worked. Rogers' rants worked. Celtic going the SFA's worked. Crawford Allen resigning compounds it. And suddenly you've got the us against them scenario, the siege mentality scenario. I think Rodgers has been striving for maybe the last 6 to 8 weeks. You know, I think we're maybe in the territory he's always wanted us to get to. Jonathan's alluded to it quite a few times on the Monday Club, as you know.
Yeah, it does. When you do look at the timeline of events, him resigning not long after this does signal that maybe there is something, and we have lived this before. Dougie McDonald ring any bells at all? Remember that whole palaver when we really, obviously, we pushed hard on that one because the referee strike apparently had foreign referees for a couple of games because the referees were that unhappy that we challenged a referee for lying. How dare we call it a referee for lying?
Judgement, yeah.
And so we that so it's similar to that where when we do seem to push back and we do seem to challenge it, things seem to happen. So I say Dougie McDonald, he lost his position after that one. And now obviously, when you look at Crawford Allen just a couple of weeks after all this. So maybe there is something there. Is he getting out of the way of Dodge before something big, the shit hits the fan, or just try to hide before it shows how incompetent they are? But you don't need to show us any proof. We've seen how incompetent they've been for the last 18 months or so since VARs came in. But the biggest problem is that, as I said, I know the comment came up earlier about getting VAR to fuck, essentially, getting rid of it. I agree. I think VAR should stay, but it needs to be run a lot better. There was a spell there when it came in England initially where they had real bad teething problems, and then I think they seemed to get into a wee rhythm. They were doing all right with it, but it seems like they've gone back the way as well. And it's like, it just feels like nobody can really perfect it. There must be a country, a league around Europe that uses VAR that's able to do it competently that we can learn from, like Germany or something like that. I mean, there must be another league that can show you how to do it. I remember at the World Cup last year, there wasn't that many issues with VAR. In fact, the whole World Cup final between Argentina and France, the referee did not have to use VAR once at all. There was no VAR calls or nothing. And it's like, so there are referees, there are, the people are out there that can run it competently without having to break against. Because there was a comment came up as well. Totally agree with this. In the stadium, it is the worst. It is the absolute pits when there's a VAR decision. Yes, it's awful. It just drags on and on. The one that always perplexes me the most is offsides. Offsides taking ages to review, and it's like an offside is offside. As the rules go, it's like, if any part of his body is offside, that's it. So surely they can see that. And then there's a weird instance as well where sometimes they will call over the match official to look at an offside review, and it's like, but he's not a linesman, he isn't an assistant, so he's the match official. In the VAR room, as we're led to believe, there is a match official and a linesman watching the screens. So it's like, surely they don't need to pull the match referee over to the screen to review an offside. So things like that, I mean, I say it's the people that are running it right now just seem to not have a clue and seem to make up the rules as they go along in some instances, but they don't genuinely know what the rule is.
Well, that's the interesting thing as well, because you talk about forthright refereeing decisions, is sometimes having the courage of your convictions to just say, look, I'm not listening to the VAR. And now that seems to be a problem, because then the individual who doesn't listen to the VAR will get targeted as well. But I think there's examples where Celtic have played at the right time in terms of this title race. That's what I would say. I'll look ahead to the weekend, a premature look ahead, because we're doing this with the judge as well on Thursday. Yeah. But the Spaghetti Hads seems a long way away. Mm-hmm. And I think the complexion of the tie changes depending on what happens at Ibrox. Livingston, though, are in disarray. And I think right now, from a rival's perspective, they're all absolutely convinced we get 3 points. How convinced are you, though, we back up the brilliant, I thought football, say brilliant in comparison with the rest of this season, right? I thought it was up there with one of our right better ones. And if that is the case, then how convinced are you we back that up then with an away win, a notoriously difficult ground, but a club that's also 10 points adrift at the bottom of the league?
Yeah, this is one we cannot afford to slip up in. I know the Spaghetti Hat has been a difficult one over the years, but I think And since Ange's second season, I think we've sort of put that to bed because he lost there initially, but then he won the second one, and then Brendan's won there this season as well. So I'd like to think that, we're over the hoodoo of it. I mean, Brendan, going back to his first time in charge, plastic pitches and Brendan Rodgers' tactics don't usually mix very well. We've had some problems with Kilmarnock this season as well. But yeah, Livy, we've already won there with 10 men for most of the game as well. Joe Hart got sent off, and we still managed to beat them 3-0 pretty convincingly in the end. It's a game where I say no mistakes can be made. We just have to, but we can't also take it for granted. And Brendan will be aware of that. Brendan will not, be treating it as, we'll walk this one. It's very much the way things have gone this season. Can't take anything for granted. So I think, professional job, go in there, just get it done, get the points on the board. 1-0, 5-0, whatever it is, as long as Celtic have got the victory at the end of the day, that's all they need. So, yeah, obviously they played us last week in the Cup at Celtic Park. Don't know if it's maybe because it was a Cup game, maybe the dynamic was a bit different. Livy had to come out and play a bit because it was win or bust. You either win the game or you don't get a point for drawing after 90 minutes in a Cup game. So maybe that was the reason why they were able to get 2 goals against us and have a bit of a go. But obviously, with being a league game, all points are valuable to them. So I'd imagine they'll just sit and try and salvage just to get a point, just to try and keep us at bay. And it's up to us to just find the openings. The problem with Livingston is they have got so much physicality in their team. Seen their team in person at Celtic Park last week. A lot of big units in that team, essentially. David Martindale's got a type when it comes to the players he signs. There's a lot of big hatchet men in that team, to put it lightly. So they are going to be a physical force. But again, we need to just try and tire them out, find those spaces in behind, and just make sure we get the points on the board, because we cannot afford any slips now. And this would not be a good time for the hoodoo of the spaghetti heads to return. Hopefully we're over that now.
Yeah, I feel it will be. I am hoping that we're into the Celtic we associate with, the running in of a title race, as it were. Usually we've kind of got the job done by now already, to be fair. But I've just got the feeling now, the foot goes down in the gas. We've found our feet. Let's just get the job done now. Keep the doubt in their end. I mean, this is if they thought they were going to, on a run to Dublin only 4 days ago, they probably already did the league in the bag. Levels of delusion like this can only help us. We can't get ahead of ourselves with the old Phil. It's been a topsy-turvy year for a Celtic fan. I think it will be either way. It'll be filed under a season, to me, that will be really unremarkable for on-field. This will not be a team. Even you can say it already, by the way, because we are 3/4 of the way through the campaign now in terms of the competitions we've been in, what's left of them. And in those 3/4, I would regard this season on the park as unremarkable a Celtic side as I can think of in a hell of a long time. I don't mean that against the individuals as players, to pick on them or any of that shite, but performance level wise, style of football wise, it's really not caught the imagination. There's been the odd win, by the way, that has been outstanding. There's been moments, as I keep alluding to, that have been fantastic. We look at players coming back. Now, CCV changes the dynamic of Celtic, I think, first and foremost. CCV could take the ball inside the centre circle when we win back possession. He's already up there, mate, and he's playing precise balls. He's playing passes that are going to dictate outcomes from the initial stage. He's not playing safe all the time. He's not looking square. He's not instantly looking back. He's not looking for negativity. He's got the confidence in his own ability. If he can see a forward pass, he'll play it. If he can get between the lines, even better. That's been massively missed. Then we've got the interesting conundrum that we'll finish the show on tonight of the return of Rio Hatate after an international break. Rio Hatate this year been missing almost the whole season. The Cameron Carter-Vickers missing the whole season. Compounded with the sale of Jota and a lost Kyogo. That is your 4, minus Callum McGregor, which would make up your famous 5 under Ange, as far as I'm concerned. That is his 5 guys, if you like. from those that 2 year spell. What do you make of the importance of Hatate joining the squad again, or coming into the first team again, and what impact can he have? Because we also have to balance it with, I've not been convinced he's been on board. In fact, to be perfectly honest with you, out of everyone who's signed a new deal, and there has been a raft of that's kind of went under the radar because the recruitment was so bad. But him signing another contract at Celtic, when you look at it, has got to be the most surprising out the lot, considering it felt as if when you watched his pre-season game, remember he was off on that. Remember we did me and Terry did a pre-season PMP. I think Quan had played the same game. We were like, we'll never see him again. We were right. I mean, I don't know what will happen to them going forward, but we wouldn't see him again this season. Mm-hmm. But Hatate that day I thought, lacklustre, complacent on the ball, and he's never really looked like the Hatate of the last 2 years. But he signed a long-term deal against all odds. He was one that we all had down as going last summer, particularly the judge. The judge convinced me, this guy's all hating this summer, just accept it. And I was like, he's fucking right. He signed a new deal. He's committed to Celtic. Will we see the same commitment on the park and anything like the Rio Hatate of old back to form for the rest of the season? And if we do, how big an impact could that have? Cameron Carter-Vickers now back after being missing almost the whole season, dominating from the back four, in and out of possession, and then Rio Hatate with that creative magic, that bravery on the ball that sometimes Celtic will be missing, and that can up the tempo of the team tenfold, just like that. Those two players might not be the two you associate with a fast-tempoed Celtic team. People instantly think of Maeda and Kyogo, but actually it's the ball that goes quicker than any player in the park. And Cameron Carter-Vickers, as I say, if he can get between the lines with a forward pass, he'll do so. He will have bravery in the ball. Hatate, very similar, with just that bit more guile, such as his position. I don't want to say it's like two new signings because it's fucking not. But those two in for the run-in certainly strengthens the hand, to say the least, if we get the two that we recognise from the Postacoglu era.
Here's my prediction of how Hatate's return will go. I don't think he'll feature against Livy because it's a plastic pitch. I think injured players, people with injury problems, tend to avoid plastic pitches. File under Jozo Siminovic, perfect example. He never played on the plastic pitches. Where Hatate's been this season, I don't think we can risk it. I think he might, maybe a fleeting substitute appearance near the end if the game is in a comfortable position. But again, even that's a risk because Livy, again, big physical hatchet men. I think he will come in for the game at Ibrox, though, which again is a big risk, but he is a player that I think thrives on risks and thrives on. So I think he'll be up for the big occasion. I know a lot of fans will be like, "Oh, it's a huge roll of the dice," but I think he's up for that. I think this is a guy that's talked about. Remember he said in interviews about how he wanted to play in the Champions League to basically prepare himself and all that, and. Many of us pointed out, well, that's great. You played that brilliant pass against Real Madrid, but we still lost 3-0 on the night. So he loves the big occasion. No bigger an occasion than what's effectively going to be a title showdown at Ibrox. Because let's be honest, that game is... I think if we would go there and lose, I think they go on and win it. I think if we win that, I think even though the points gap won't be as big, I think we'll go on and win the title. So for me, I think Hatate will thrive. Playing Ibrox, as much of a risk as it may be for him not to play even so long. And yes, you're right. When he has played this season, whether it's a lack in confidence, maybe the manager hasn't shown enough faith in him. He hasn't been the Hatate of old, but I think him coming in at Ibrox, I think there was just something in the air that day where it's like, this is set up for him to do something special. And I just feel like it. But I think Livy, I'd tread carefully with that one because of that plastic pitch, because the last thing he needs him to come back, get on the park and go off injured again. So I would rather save him for that. And I think his cavalier attitude, callousness, whatever you want to call it, I think he'll thrive on that occasion. I really do.
But he's a top player though as well. This is the thing. I mean, the reason he takes risks is he has confidence in his ability that he can do these things. And I share that confidence. And we've got evidence to back it up over the last couple of years, but just not under Rodgers yet. David comes in with an interesting point saying, he takes too many risks. He's a massive fan. but he's not sure he's a Rodgers style of player. I don't know. I think Rodgers style player will be good players. I think, if I'm honest, Hatate has maybe confused himself. I think towards the end of last season, he was very much on the judge's boat that he was away in the summer as well. I think he agreed to the judge like I did, that he's going to leave. And then I think he's realised the interest maybe wasn't quite as strong as he thought. There maybe was the odd nibble, but it maybe wasn't a nibble that was that all that appealing. He's ended up signing a new deal. He's maybe also thought that Rodgers' style of football then and maybe doesn't suit him as much. And by the way, first and foremost, injuries have played a massive part with that as well. I mean, it's so easy, I think, for us to just go, Hatate, Rodgers, it doesn't work, does it? I don't think we've had a consistent run of it yet. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Rodgers and having creative players in his team is not something new. And Hatate is the definition of that. But undeniably, the man of the match at the weekend and the return of the fridge, that is exactly what we need for this running. And I also think, for whatever reason, he installs fear in terms of others, the other lot, really, knowing what he brings to our table more than what Hatate does, I think.
I think he brings a lot in Kyogo, Hatate being there. And you look at some of the displays last season, I think it was the League Cup final. We beat them at Hampden, and the link-up play between Hatate and Kyogo that day, I think it was for the second goal. The second goal, nicer. So I think he can bring out the best in Kyogo as well on that occasion. And then
the fridge, though.
With CCV, yeah. I mean, that one's huge for him being back because he brings a bit of calmness to the back line as well. He really does. I mean, obviously people draw comparisons to Virgil van Dijk. I don't think I'll ever reach the level of Van Dijk, but he's the closest thing we've got in this day and age to a player at that level. You know, a real calm head at the back, can stroll through games. In a season where our back line has been an absolute riot, let's be honest here, with the way it's chopped and changed, and Stevie Welsh getting games ahead of £7.5 million worth of centre-backs, Lagerbielke and Nawrocki. I mean, last week we saw as well, Lagerbielke didn't come on initially against St Johnstone. He put a Water back into the back line before he brought Lagerbielke on with about 6 minutes to go. And of course, he's had those strange comments. He's always kind of said that the two of them are good enough. So the back line's been an absolute shambles. But him being there, if he can just stay fit now at the end of the season, that's just so crucial. Then, he is imperative for us. So, it's just a case of just keeping him fit. But he's been another one who's been stop-start all season. He signed a new deal. And he's been cussed as well with injuries. Remember Stephen Welsh even signed a new deal within a day. He was in a boot essentially and sitting pictured in A&E after training one day.
These contracts.
These contracts are absolutely cussed, man. So, but regards to the comment you had there for David Kelly saying about Hatate taking risks, Brendan's at a stage where he's got to take risks now.
Great point. Yes.
Got to.
I
know it's very stubborn. I know he's stubborn, but he's got to look at the bigger picture here. Time to take some risks, Brendan. Got to.
I think that's a brilliant point. And on that note, we will call it a day. It's been brilliant to be back on the bus. The Tuesday ticket, myself and Phil McGinley taking risks. Keep your eyes on the risks. Cheers to everyone in the comments. It's been brilliant fun tonight. Cheers, Phil. I will see you later. Next one.